Hey everybody, welcome back to Into Form. I'm Paul,
And I'm Jimmy.
and today we're doing a sequel video to our last video about still presence and creation. And in the last video, if you saw that, if you haven't seen it, go watch it because it's good background to this video. And we talked for quite a while about the sort of the philosophy behind these different teachings of still presence and creation. The still presence teachings being the mindfulness teachings, the meditation teachings, be in the present moment teachings, and access the peace and the stillness that's within you, and it's always available in the present moment. And then the creation teachings, on the other hand, being the teachings of empowerment and uh, how to create your life with intention and focus on what you want and bring your visions into reality. And so those are kind of very different teachings that we talked a lot about in the last videos. And in this video, we want to talk about the not the philosophical, but the practical side of how to bring them together in practice and how to actually live our lives as conscious creators and benefiting from both teachings, benefiting from having access to the stillness and being able to create our reality, and also avoiding the shadow sides of both teachings, which is on the side of still presence, it's not participating in life. And then on the creation side, it's uh, over identifying with the ego. So we're going to dive into that and yeah, just really how to unify them in practice. Um, so Jimmy,
Yeah, I
let's
feel
dive in.
excited to dive in. It
Yeah.
feels good. It feels I just want to start by saying I think this is one of the most important things that we could talk about in our current modern day society. Because what we're needing is I notice that in society there's a lot of activism energy that's been arising for a long time now, but especially in 2020, there's just been more and more activism energy. This stand up to the man, stand up to the systems that aren't working, show up to this. And I've had a lot of realization recently that it's less about showing up to the systems that aren't working and more about showing up to the system that works, that isn't here yet, that wants to be here,
Mm,
that wants to come into form, if you will.
yeah, the new earth.
The new earth. And
Yeah.
what that's going to take is it's going to take these two paradigms melded together. It's going to take stillness, it's going to take presence, focus, listening to the divine. What does the divine really want as a system and structure in
Hmm.
place on this planet? Because our mental intelligence isn't really capable, I don't think, of creating the kind of profundity in a society that we're really aiming for as a new earth. So it's going
Mm.
to take a lot of spiritual stillness and really being attuned and listening. And then it's also going to take a ton of action, a ton of it, a ton of
Mm.
engagement. It's
Mm.
going to take project after project after project. It's going to take every single individual showing up for their contribution and their part in shifting us into. I think a lot of spiritualists easily go into like that stillness place of like, oh, all we got to do is vibe. All we got to do is vibe. That is our part.
Yeah.
And yeah, like yeah, you can say that. Yeah, I think you're making an impact because it's helping shifting the vibrational scales on the planet. But we're not going to move into the structure of the society that we want to see until we start taking practical actions, until we really start doing the heavy lifting, carrying the
Mm.
wood, carrying the water. Yeah. So yeah, I think personally, I really have this strong, passionate feeling about calling in the new systems, the new structure. And personally, as a Taurus too, I
Mm.
feel how much of my personal energy and time is being called for from the divine, like an intense amount of engagement. Um, and I have a sense that level of engagement is being called out of a lot of people right now. And so it's really, I feel, important for us to allow ourselves to jump into that creative engagement while really being tuned in, tapped on, silent, and clear about what we're creating and why we're creating it.
Hmm. Hmm. I love how you just gave the kind of the flavor that we're going for. Like, what would it feel like to, because that's a good way to get yourself in the mindset, the appropriate mindset for unifying still presence and creation is what would it feel like? And you kind of just described what would it feel like is to feel still and present, but also very much engaged with the world. One thing I thought of when you were talking about uh, all we have to do is just vibe, you know, which uh, uh, I kind of get that because it makes a difference at the level of energy. But maybe what that, and that's like the people doing these group meditations, you know, that are organized sometimes globally, and everybody meditate at the same time, and we're going to change the energy. And yet, and that's great. And yet, what it might be missing is we also need to take actions that are connected to the physical world somehow too. And I feel like that's also what we're talking about when we talk about unifying still presence and creation is it kind of parallels unifying the non-physical and the physical and you know bringing heaven to earth too, because we're bringing an awake consciousness or an awake presence into whatever we're doing, whatever whatever we're creating in this physical world. Um, so yeah. That's kind of what
Yeah,
me there.
yeah. Like like, what is meditation good for if it isn't to be inspired to create something?
Mm.
I guess for purification purposes. But what is purification good for if it isn't to be inspired to create something
Mhm.
at a purified level? Um, yeah, I feel like for me, I definitely have leaned towards more of a creative side of creation side of my life, anyways, than the stillness avenue. And so I feel it's easier for me to talk on like how to be somebody who's already on that side and or already it's easier for me to talk on honestly, like if you're on the stillness side, if you're meditating and you're going through that path, like what is helpful for you to create or to step into a more creative uh, engagement with your life and your surroundings. And I
Mhm.
think a big part is just really getting and practicing that life is a meditation. Really, that
Mm.
every moment, no matter what the actions are, you can be just as present, you can be just as meditative as you are when you're sitting in temple or sitting in your special, like, meditation spot in your house, um, or
Mm.
if you're chanting or whatever. It's like any meditative practice can be can happen, can take place, no matter what's happening with the senses in front of the eyes, whether I'm eating, whether I'm going on a walk, whether I'm doing construction and I'm literally building a house, or I'm a computer programmer and I'm sitting down and I'm doing intense puzzle solving to create codes that solve massive technological problems. It's like that. I can apply the same level of silent meditation into those moments. So I think that's a big thing, right? Is just to realize that your meditative practice can happen anywhere at any time in every moment, and that life itself can be just as potent of a meditation as any other.
Mm. Yeah, I love that because I really do like that a lot, Jimmy, because for me, sometimes the way my mind thinks about meditation is it's compartmentalized. Like only when I'm sitting is it truly meditation, only when I'm on the cushion. But I love that opening it up to see any activity as potentially a meditation. Yeah, we had a phone call one time, and I'm really drawn to writing, to creative writing, and you said to me something that really resonated with me that my writing is a meditation, and I think for uh, all of us who are artists, you know that can be maybe one of the most profound meditations is creating your art. Um, and sometimes you, in a way, access a deeper state when you're creating art than you might sitting on the cushion, because you get kind of into those subconscious regions of the mind that the art comes from, or deep down inside where the creativity is really coming from too. Um, so, so yeah, so I love that. I love that for people who are uh, uh, on the still present side, trying to become more of the creator that they are in truth. It'd be helpful to see everything as a meditation. Yeah.
Yeah, I also imagine that it would be important to check in sincerely and genuinely with the self, and why
Mm.
there isn't much active engagement happening. If you don't find active engage, if there really isn't much happening in your life, check in sincerely with that. Um, is it because you truly, authentically don't feel there's nothing, there's no active project you feel inspired to create? Maybe you feel genuinely active enough for your levels of activity. You really just do want um, purification, silent space. I mean, always find what's right for you. There's no right avenue here. Me and Paul are really here to share just an a platform for spiritual experience that I know works for me, and Paul believes it works for him as well, and we both endeavor to like follow that path of stillness and creation.
Mhm.
And I don't know, maybe there's really a purpose for people here to be just like completely 100% still, but I think that understanding comes from 100% sincere check-in, because I know
Mm.
for me, I've been not engaged in my life for a lot of my life due to fear of looking bad, by sharing myself, sharing my
Yeah.
creativity, being
Yeah.
afraid of looking bad in that, being insecure, feeling like I'm not good enough. I'm not like
Mhm.
my what I create isn't good enough. It's not.
Mhm.
Don't even need to be out there serving and doing that because I'm just not good enough. It's like all these limiting beliefs have been the reason why I wasn't creating. And I think stillness can be an easy way to hide from your limiting beliefs.
Absolutely. Thanks for saying that, Jimmy. And that's the shadow of non-participation. Um, and I just wanted to say too, because like I said in the last video, I have kind of a bias towards still presence, for whatever reasons. I don't fully know why. Um, or at least I have had it, and maybe I'm kind of shedding it now. But one thing I found in myself is certain judgments of things that have to do with the creation side that have kept me from being more fully engaged, more fully active in the way that a creator authentically would be. And those judgments are of things like desire. For example, in the Buddhist teaching, um, which is I would say one of the one of the main still presence teachings, Buddhism. Uh, Desire is almost seen as bad, and so in the people who have some familiarity with that in the spiritual field, or yeah, whenever they became familiar with it, they might have a judgment of desire, that, oh, if I pursue my desires, then I'm becoming more identified with the ego,
Mm.
or I'm getting more wrapped up in samsara. There might be some association like that, and that's been there for me in some form. Um, and I found in myself, um, kind of a distancing from desires, because of that inner attitude. And also, in Buddhism, there's a similar attitude. They don't say it like desire and ego is bad. They don't say it like that, but they see it as deluded or ignorant, maybe. Um, and that I found that kind of attitude towards ego within myself too. And it's been a process to kind of change my views, my points of view, my perspective, about desire and ego, to allow myself to open up to the creation side, because you need both of those elements to be a conscious creator. You
Mm-hmm.
need you need your ego, at least for functionality, and you you need your desires to, um, give you a direction of what you want to create. So you need those elements, and judging them is gonna shut them down. You know, and you're also going to create a split inside yourself, because it doesn't matter if you're fond of the still presence teachings or not. desire and ego are part of you, and they're not intrinsically bad. We just need to bring consciousness to them, because they
Yeah.
can run us in an unconscious way. I feel like, and
Yeah, and
that's,
I give
yeah,
for you that's been the fear. That's been the fear
absolutely,
of
yeah.
in the stillness path is that you'll fall and collapse into egoic desires.
Mm.
And so like no desires, that no desire is what you crave, in that
Mhm.
space, right?
Mm.
There's a spectrum line. No desire is what
Mhm.
I crave. But it's yeah, but it's a scary place to be, like, to find that spiritual path and find this like stillness that's working for you, and then being afraid that if you allow yourself to have desires, you'll get caught up in the egoic landslide of of spiritual damnation or doom or something, right? Like the
Mhm.
ego will just take back over, and the purification process will be rewinded or something like that.
Mhm.
I think there's a
Mhm.
common fear, right?
Mhm.
uh,
I like the way you
yeah,
said that. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and I really appreciate you said too, like, because we need desires to be able to have a trajectory, a direction. And what was coming to me, and this was I found really potent for me, is I'm a reminder. If you aren't familiar, if anybody's familiar, if you're familiar with like Bhakti yoga or Vedic philosophy, it's like 5,000-year-old ancient wisdom written down and passed through ancestor of teachers. And I've been grateful to learn a lot about the philosophy and learn a lot about that path. And Krishna, who is considered to be the supreme personality of Godhead, basically the highest form of infinite intelligence. I was at a Bhakti yoga discussion at one point in my life, and this really potent piece came to me. And it was saying that like many on the spiritual path desire to become one with Krishna, to like remerge with Krishna as the oneness of everything. And what's I remember the teacher in this class said, and most devotees find that, because I had asked a question about this, and he said most devotees actually find the idea of becoming one with Krishna quite boring. What's really exciting is to serve Krishna infinitely, and to serve Krishna is to be one with Krishna's desires. It's not to be one with Krishna; it's to be one with Krishna's desires and have
Mhm.
Krishna's desires in my
God's
heart.
desires. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
God's desires. Yeah, I can use God as a more blatant term.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I like using all sorts of different terms for God.
Mhm. Mhm.
Christian is one of my favorites. I like that sound vibration.
Mm.
And I found that, yeah, it's what we're talking about here is that it's that what God wants most out of us is to have desires, and to share the desires of him of God's is to share God's desires.
Mm.
Because the infinite intelligence, right? I think that's also a favorite name of God for me, infinite intelligence. Infinite intelligence has a plan for everything. It's like, and it's up to us on how much we match our free will with that plan,
Mm.
because we have free will. And so we can sit around in silence, and maybe that's God's desire for us. But I have a sense that in most people, God's sending a little bit more than that. I think my partner Gemma, she's the author of Breakthrough Your Threshold, and in her book, she has a really potent, and in her teachings, she shares with people. She says, what has been knocking at your heart for years that you have not given yourself to? What has been that one thing that for as long as you can remember has been knocking at your heart? Like, I want to do that. That's something I want to do. I mean, is it like creating a bakery? Is it writing a book? Is it like what is it that the I think a lot of people have books in them that they want to write, and they don't ever sit
Mhm.
down to the computer to write. There's most likely something knocking at your heart that's been knocking at your heart for a long time, and that's God tapping in and going, hey, this is my desire. I think you jive with this as well. And it's about, do we pick up that desire and run with it or not, you
Mhm.
know
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that helped me shift my view on desire, from judging it and just being like, oh, if I follow my desires, I'm just gonna become more unconscious, and the spiritual rewind, like you were talking about.
yeah.
One of the things that helped me shift was seeing the process of having a desire as a potential, but not yet manifested. Going from there to seeing the manifestation of your desire. I saw it as writing a book, from just having the seed idea to then creating the book and then sharing it with all these different people. and then they're all being inspired, it's bringing them joy and they're being inspired by it. That's a very beautiful process, so there's something divine about it. So that helped me kind of shift out of just judging desire and see it as it's the seed from which the flower will be born, and there's a beauty in that growth process. And another thing I just want to add is that once we achieve one desire, um, that's not the end. Another desire is going to pop up, and that's probably why the Buddhists were like, "Well, fuck it, we're not gonna fire it. We're not gonna follow any desires at all, because it's just infinite cascade of desires." Um, but
And that's where stillness comes in, right? I feel like that's where
mm,
stillness comes in, is this space to break away from all like the material world egoic desires. Those places of meditation are the places to meditate, is to meditate on Krishna's desires,
mhm,
right? Like
mm,
it is to meditate on God, and to meditate on what God desires,
mm,
what God wants, and what God wants from me as a humble servant.
mhm,
It's yeah, that stillness is what helps us break away from the egoic desires and actually gets us into the purified desires, get us into God's wishes.
mm. One thing that's coming to me, Jimmy, as we're talking is that our intention for this video was kind of talk about the practical side, but I'm realizing as we're talking that the practical, you can't really separate it fully from your views and attitudes, the philosophy that
Yeah,
you hold about all this, because if you have a um, positive view of certain things, that's going to help you be a creator, and or vice versa. If you have a negative view of certain things, then that might hinder your ability to flow naturally into your creator self. Or on the still
yeah,
present side, if you just judge sitting in meditation and focusing on your breath, oh, they're not doing anything, you know, that might hinder you from sitting down, and still the mind. Um, but then when all those views are when they kind of leave us, then we can be freed up to be either whatever we're called towards, and uh, maybe both. Maybe both.
yeah. And I think I like to, if we wanted to bring, I love what you said, Paul. Like, yeah, we endeavor to be in a practical, like sharing practical application of how you can achieve this in your life. And really, it's just about the way you think, the way you believe. Yeah, what's happening for you around these different paradigms.
Mm.
And I think if we did want to talk about practical really quick, I
Yeah,
think
let's go
for
there. Let's
someone,
go there.
yeah, for
Yeah.
someone who is on the creative, heavily more on the creative, like you're already active, you're already engaged, maybe a little too engaged, maybe a little too active, like where it's maybe draining you or exhausting you, then it'd be really ideal. And this is for me personally, like I'm going to take this advice, just so you know. I'm not some guy just like spitting this out. I'm going to receive my own medicine here, because I think I can add more stillness in my life. And I think it's important to, what stillness I think for will help for me on a practical level, by choosing, like sitting down and going, okay, where can I add in this week a little bit more of me actually just sitting in one place and staring at something, whether it's like sitting outside or going for a quiet, silent walk.
Mm.
Um, like, where can I be inactive actually in my week? So I think that's the idea, is to become inactive, because I think we're, as a creative person and on that creation side, where things can get swept away, is just swept away in the activity, and in the gratification of the
Mm-hmm.
activity,
Mm.
uh, and to take a minute to be slow and silent and quiet,
Mm-hmm.
I think offers an opportunity for rest in somebody that is that engaged,
Mm.
and recharging of batteries and rejuvenation. So practically, just sit with yourself and really find, like, what can be a simple commitment to a simple slow down practice, whether it's like 15 minutes of silent sitting in one place meditation a day. Simple practice like that, I think, can dramatically change the potency of somebody who's very engaged in creative projects.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just want to jump on the end of that wagon, Jimmy. I love what you're talking about there, and I feel like for me in practicing still presence, um, the, not everybody has access to this in the beginning, but once you've been practicing what you're talking about, kind of slowing down, letting the mind slow down, you can notice more subtle things. And of course, there you notice your thoughts, notice your emotions, but more subtle than those things is the space in which they're happening. And in a sense, I think we could say still presence and creation, even if we're not conscious of them, both of them are always present. There's always creation happening. Right now we're talking, we're creating words, we're creating experience, we're creating a video, creation's happening. But also still presence is something that's always here. It's always happening in a sense, even though it's kind of a non-happening. It's the space in which our thoughts and emotions are arising, and you can notice that at any time. And for me, I find that to be a very potent way to practice still presence is to just notice at any moment. And one could do this if they were very engaged with something. If they're having a conversation, or they're making a meal, or they're at work. It's possible still, especially with practice, but even with not so much practice, because it's always here anyway, is just notice the space in which things are happening. Just notice kind of the empty space in which your thoughts are arising. Notice the empty space in which your emotions are arising. Notice the space in which everything is arising, and notice that it's kind of free. It's kind of free because it doesn't have any content inside of it. So you can and it can happen in just a few seconds. Oh, there it is.
Hmm. Yeah, I appreciate that. What that gives for me in the moment is when I am active in something, to give myself 15 to 30 seconds of just being aware of the space and not needing to think about what I'm doing, but just to watch thoughts that come through my mind. That gives such a break in whatever activity that there's immediately a freshness when coming back into it. Even 15, 30 seconds later, you just seeing the space and then focusing back in on whatever I'm working on. Yeah, that's a helpful, you can just fit that in anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So what? So okay. So we kind of talked about. Um, Actually, we just talked about both there. I thought we missed
Yeah,
one, but we
I
yeah.
well, I think too, like a practical on the side of somebody who is immersed in stillness and doing a lot of heavily doing a lot of meditation. Maybe you're meditating 2 to 4 hours a day and reading spiritual
That's a
books.
lot.
It is a lot. I don't
Two
know.
to
I
four
don't know.
hours. Yeah, that's a commitment.
People do it, I guess.
Yeah,
But even like
some
if you're
some definitely
meditating a
do.
lot,
Yeah.
yeah, and reading a lot and studying a lot, but and finding yourself in a very quiet space and trying to endeavor for that space totally and wanting to engage more. I think a good practice could be sitting down with pen and paper. I imagine people in stillness meditation like journaling too.
Mm.
I feel
Hmm.
like people on that path like journaling. I've never been one for journaling but I know its potency.
It's still
And
very still.
yeah, it's still very still.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I
Mm.
think something like an easy practice in journaling could be just writing down what are the desires in my heart and letting anything be okay. Even if the desire comes up, like even if you're vegan and the desire is like I want to eat chicken nuggets, like let it come up. Like
Mm.
let any desire come up, and then you can peruse these desires, and some might be egoic, some might be God's desires. And no
Mhm.
matter what they
Mm.
are, they're all desires, they're all beautiful. Let them all be, just what they are on the paper. And then get clear and committed to put your energy into one of them that really lights you up. Like find the desire that hit that paper that you're like, oh my gosh, if I created that, I would be I would be in heaven. I would just be ecstatic. It would be the most
Mm.
amazing thing in my entire life.
I-
Because that's God's desire in your heart.
Yeah.
The desire that just rings with so much elation is the desire that God planted there, and to follow that desire only unravels deeper and deeper spiritual healing and transformation.
I,
So yeah, I think that's a good practical way.
I love that, Jimmy. That really lit me up just hearing you talk about the
Oh,
desire in
cool.
your. I love that. Yeah. And I'm getting an image of, I feel like still presence in creation, when you think about connecting with the authentic desires like you're talking about, it's like a flame inside of you.
Hmm.
It's there's a passion there. Like I want to bring this to this world. I want to bring this forward. I want to create this. That's a fire. And then I feel like still presence, you could also say, is it's a fire uh, in and of itself. It's the fire that purifies the ego. When we're sitting in stillness, when we're bathing in that stillness, and we're not getting up from our cushion, even when the ego is throwing, 1,000 arrows of Mara at us, like the Buddha under the Bodhi tree. Like it can throw anything at us. We're not going to move. And then it's the fire of purification, and it's almost like we're talking about bringing those flames together, almost like they're two flames dancing. You know.
Yeah, yeah. Bring those flames together so that way they can co-create
Mm-hmm.
and experience.
Mm.
Yeah, I think we're coming pretty close to a wrap up here. I wanted to share as a final note for anybody who's I know a big block can get to creating can be, wow, that desire, as much as it lights me up, it just seems so big. It just seems so big. And to remember that your mental intelligence isn't the one that has to do the job or the responsibility or the service.
Mm-hmm.
It is getting out of the way to let God do his job. God's job is a lot of the heavy lifting, a lot of the work, you know what I mean? Let God tell you what to do and then you do it. And you'll always have enough skill. You'll always have enough intelligence. If that desire that's in your heart lights you up, you have everything you need to create it. Every single, whether the resources, it's all there. It's all there. As long as you're connected to the stillness of it, to the presence, that it's God's desire in your heart and it's alive, and trust that, and to trust God in that process, and to have faith that if you get committed and clear that this is what you are creating with your energy and time, it is created. And
Mm.
it's as simple as that.
Mm. Thank you, Jimmy. That was so powerful. And what it brings up for me is we are creators, but we're also always co-creators.
Yes,
Maybe that's a good note to end on, huh?
that's a great note to end on.
Oh, thanks everyone for being with us. Thanks for joining us in this meditation uh, of a dialogue. Thank you.
Mm. Blessings.